Alrighty, hello everybody, and welcome to Leadership as a Philosophy, Not a Checklist. This is my first interview, very excited to do it. I've talked about this several times. I'm actually really looking forward to some people emailing back and saying, hey, I would like to have a discussion about a certain topic that you said. So Seth was the first person that was kind enough to reach out to me and say, hey, I would like to talk about some of these things. What happened is offline we were having a discussion about some of the videos that I did and some of the concepts, and he liked most of what was on there, but then I said, I'm really wanting to discuss something about power. His eyes lit up. He said, ooh, that's what I want to talk about. So sent him a couple of thoughts that I had, and the idea today is to have a discussion about power in organizations. So Seth, you just like to say hi to the nice people out there? I have
everyone.
very few followers, so you're not saying hi to a lot of so don't be shy.
Hello, follower 1 and 2.
1 and 2. And they're both family members. So what I just wanted to start off with was a question that I had, and I think we talked about it before, which is, what in the heck is it that makes people decide to follow somebody? Because if you're going to follow somebody, you're giving them power. Mm-hmm. Over you, right? Some level of control over yourself. So what is that? I don't know. But what I think is, as we went through the philosophy part that I talked about, is somebody that has humility, integrity, empathy, and is paying attention to stuff. You'll follow them because they're not going to lie. Right. They're going to pay attention. They're not going to go off and do something extraordinarily dumb. You hope. And they're paying attention to the chaos around you, because most of the people are focused on one thing.
Right.
So that's, if we go back and look throughout history, like I talked about, that's what I think has been going on until about 100 years ago, when somehow we decided that you needed a credential for that. But you can't teach humility, right? Humility is performance-based. So one of the things that we talked about ahead of time is, I think that, I don't know if you remember, but at the end of my initial 9 videos, I said, hey, here's a recommendation for promotion for people. And there's 3 questions. Would you voluntarily follow that person somewhere else? Should they get a raise?
Yeah.
And should they get promoted? And if, over 50% of the people say no,
Right.
don't. Because that person doesn't deserve to be in charge of people if they can't do those things.
Right.
So then what happens is that person is probably very impressive to the big bosses and gets promoted because they're impressing the bosses instead of being held accountable for their people.
Yeah. And unfortunately enough, I think that is sometimes the best case scenario when it comes down to power being handed off to these people and they're able to be promoted. I think in some instances, it's this person is going to be promoted because they caused me the least amount of issues. I had to deal with the least amount of problems from their people, sometimes just because they suppressed those problems. Additionally, this person's personality mirrors my own so much that, I feel like I'm promoting myself. I'm giving myself a shot.
Right.
So it's the bias that entails that allows a person to become the number 1 candidate in these pools for promotion. And so they receive this additional amount of authority just because of the fact that they schmoozed with the right people, or they were able to put out fires just by keeping people from, reporting their bad behaviors and things like that. And sometimes I feel like those are the worst case scenarios for why people get promoted. But additionally, like you said, in the best case scenario, it's just that they produce numbers, which may be a result of their leadership and very well may be a result of the quality of people that they have working for them, which has no indication whatsoever as to whether or not they're a good leader or a good person for that next role.
Yeah, I apologize. I'm giving us something to take notes on because we might say something that we want to talk about. So what you just said is great, because I had a thought about that too, is that I've said in a couple other videos, is you'll take somebody and say, my favorite, I actually saw a company that is hiring up in a major city in Arizona, that is hiring for a leadership development trainer. Very excited. So I went and looked, and the requirements were a business degree and an MBA and a good personality to teach leadership.
Uh-huh.
But so we're going to have somebody go teach leadership that has never been assessed for how they handle people
Right.
or how they handle power.
Right.
Because I've talked about it before. You know, a leader, I did a video on the My Lai massacre just the other day, and I said leaders are judged on how they handle their power.
Mm-hmm.
You have the power to do the right thing or the wrong thing.
Right.
You do the wrong thing, that's bad, right?
Mm-hmm.
But so you just talked about we have somebody that's a numbers person, that's schmoozing, that's doing all these sort of things.
Mm-hmm.
Well, where were they tested for how they deal with people?
Right. Right. I think
Go
that
ahead.
goes hand in hand with what you're mentioning in relation to that particular position. But a person who is coming directly from courses where they were learning isn't now all of a sudden in the perfect position to be a person who teaches. You shouldn't necessarily go from learning to teaching. You
Right.
should go from learning to executing. And
Exactly.
then once you've gotten good at executing on what you've learned, then you may be in a position to begin to teach it, but you haven't actually ossified anything at
Right.
that point in time when you come out of a class as a learner, and
Yeah.
now you're going to go directly into teaching other people how
Well,
to
and
be what.
so right, right. I mean, I agree with that 100%. Because what I think the issue is that I've been reading a couple of books recently. I actually just finished about a month ago. I'm going to do a thing on Booker T. Washington's Up from Slavery.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he he talks about this entire period where he was doing a bunch of work and being assessed, and people were watching what he did, and suddenly because of his performance, he got selected to go start working at the Tuskegee Institute and founding all that, and did an amazing job. He was an amazing leader. Zero training,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Zero training.
Yeah.
And so that to me is one of those deals where it's like, where in this entire thing are we assessing how somebody is with people?
Right.
Because you don't need, as we know, you don't need the boss to be the best at anything except for dealing with the team
Mm-hmm.
and making sure the team is the best.
Right.
Because you know, you have an organization with 70 people in it, and you have all of those people behaving at their maximum. That's your job. Your job is not to be the best of fill in the blank.
Right. And I feel like we see the fruits of that coming to fruition when we talk about all the scandals that you see, not
Oh,
only in business, but in politics. Those scandals oftentimes are perpetrated by someone who never proved themselves, never was in a proving ground when it
yep,
came down to something people oriented. Instead, they excelled in something technical, or they excelled in oration.
right.
Maybe a politician, oftentimes the best orator in the room. So they're, because of that, that now means that they should be in charge of a district of people, or city, state, whatever level you want to
Right.
expand it out to be. They should be in charge of everything that these people are hoping and dreaming for, just because of the fact that they've proven to be good at one thing. But it's not the one thing that ever really mattered the most anyway, because a people orientation, a way of building relationships, a way of developing people and sustaining people, and in some instances with politics, actually taking people's voice and amplifying
Right.
it. These are things that they haven't shown any capability with. And it's never even been asked or questioned as
Yeah.
to whether or not that makes sense.
Well, so I have this line that I said just recently to somebody. He said, "So here's the thing: we're all mad at our current political mess, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
On either side,
Mm-hmm.
they're all terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we have we have allowed these people to be manipulative, lie, cheat, steal, cover things up, and not hold them accountable for it for their entire progress through the political system. And now we're getting to see it, and we're mad about it.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
we've sort of abdicated our responsibility as voters to fire all of these people
Mm.
and put people in there that are doing it. And then if they don't, fire them again.
Yeah.
But we've sort of just become numb to that.
Yeah.
But to your point, we have these people that are good at manipulating and doing systems and doing that and doing that. Not anybody has gone, hey, do these people have integrity?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Basic, right?
Most of them, no.
Yeah. It's a fundamental thing.
Right.
And yet, no.
And we promote them because, or we hire them and vote them because of that. Do they have empathy? Well, they talk like it, but they don't.
Right.
Right. Because
Superficial.
if they had empathy, why would they exempt themselves from everything?
Right.
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 Every single one of them. Oh, this law applies to you, but not us.
Yeah.
And then do they have integrity, or do they have humility? No, absolutely not. Right. Now,
Worst of
there's
all.
some of the new congressmen that I've seen that are veterans that have been elected are going up there to try to do something, and they say, "Hey, I'm here to help you." But they're new. They might get wrapped up in the system, right? You still got to watch. Just because they're good now
And
doesn't
that
mean they're going to be.
is where what comes in is what you were speaking about. What happens when you give power to anyone,
Right.
Of any moral character, any moral fiber, whether they were good to begin with and were corrupted by it, or whether they were corrupt to begin with and
Yep.
it only showed later on in their career.
Well,
either
okay.
way, we see the same results happening, and that's sometimes what ties the 70s and the 80s to the 90s and the 2000s.
Well,
is that is still the case.
Why? What's the what are the two most popular quotes about power? Right. Abraham Lincoln. Anybody can handle adversity, but you want to see somebody's character, give him power. We keep saying that 160 years later, right? And then, man, I forgot the guy that wrote, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. The problem is, I think I went and researched the quote, and they said, well, a bunch of people have said it, but this guy's famous for it. There's a whole bunch of things I found in my research where you go back and find out, oh,
we attributed
this really didn't have, or this, or we're not even sure.
Uh-huh.
So I don't know if you saw my thing about the Tao Te Ching.
Yeah.
Because they think that it was written by, I just forgot his name. Lao Tzu. But then you go and do some research and you say, well, we don't know.
Right.
It's like, okay, I don't care. Is the wisdom correct? Yes, the wisdom is correct, right? So power. Well, the idea is that the purpose, because we talked about that, or I talked about that in the hierarchy chapter, is that if you let a hierarchy become stale, right, and nobody's watching it, and you let people have too much power, and then don't correct them immediately when they abuse it, then things just get catastrophically worse.
Right.
And so that's part of what the vigilance thing is, even with yourself, right? Because I know that you're in charge of an organization right now. There are things that you can do that you most likely shouldn't.
Sure.
Right.
Oh,
and
yeah.
so that's the judge, right? You have to know when to apply it or to never apply it, because it's like, oh, I can get away with this if I wanted to. When I was getting towards the end of my term at a organization that I was in charge of, I'd been there about 5 years, and there was one day I walked in, everything was running smooth, and I said, you know what? I could just walk out the door, and nobody would even flinch, because they would assume I was doing the right thing.
Right.
They would assume I had a reason.
Yeah.
And then I said, it's time for me to go, because that will get to you.
Yeah.
Once you get to a point where you realize that, hey, I don't have to perform anymore.
Right.
Time to go.
Yeah.
You need to go somewhere else where you got to start your reputation over, because then you lose everything, right? How long does it take to get a good reputation, and how long to destroy it, right?
True.
Years to cultivate and seconds to destroy that thing.
The scary thing that I think of when I think about that, what you went through, is that there's no guarantee that you'll have a person like yourself in a position like that where they would be willing to abdicate their power and authority. But at the same time, you're also not ever certain that you're going to get that person that will even rise to that level, rise to that occasion where they're able to have things moving and working in the way that they're intended to from the beginning. And so it almost comes down to something as important as personality, which is misjudged so frequently when it comes down to promotions, when it comes down to who put you in that role in the first place, and did they just get lucky with you, or was it actually a logical and ethical decision that they made? It's bribery. All right.
I say that all the time.
And that's the difficulty. That's the real.
That's where I think that this is the important discussion, because what needs to happen is, I don't know if you remember the video I did where I talked about What you have to have is, here's your hierarchy. And sure, you have all of your management and numbers people at every level of the organization.
Always.
But then you also have to have a leader type that is keeping an eye on those managers, keeping an eye on these people, and then keeping an eye on the leadership. And so when you go to promote somebody, you go and say, look, it's an HR nightmare, right? I want to promote this person. Why? They don't have any of the paperwork. They don't have any of the certificates. Yes, but they make sound decisions. They have humility. They treat their people well. Everybody respects them, and they're not going to screw up. Yeah, but I can't promote somebody on that one. I've got somebody with all these qualifications. Well, okay, promote the person with all the qualifications. You put them in charge. They're a tyrant. They have everything. Everything goes to crap, and you go, why is it a disaster?
Right.
You picked the wrong person.
Yeah.
And so you need a leadership development program where there's leaders talking to leaders.
Yeah. And you need
and I don't know that
consistency.
right.
You
And
need
I don't know if that
consistency
happens.
around that. It hardly ever happens. I believe that it hardly ever happens, which is why we see so many of the problems that we see over and over again, which is why what you're saying and the book that you've written is revelatory when it shouldn't be at this point in time. Here it's 2020. We talk about 2020 as if everything is so advanced, everything is so evolved, and yet one of the most basic foundations for things to be built off of, which is how to select a leader and why you select that leader, is something that is still it's still being solidified as to how you come across what these things should be. And it's because of the fact that most people aren't looking at it from this standpoint at all. And to bring this to their attention is something that is a new thought altogether.
Well, and so what I think, and I mean, I agree with what you're saying. What I think is that we have lost it, because none of this stuff that I'm talking about, people that are watching this that are leader types are going to go, duh, this is so obvious. The problem is that we've lost connection with that wisdom, because if we were serious about it, then we would put effort into identifying and developing leadership types. I want you to be in charge of people. Yeah, this person's arrogant, they're condescending, they're always manipulating people, not putting them in charge. Yeah, but they make me $10 million a month. Right. Well, they don't get to be in charge of people. I'll have them go over there and keep doing their $10 million a job thing. I'll give them a pay raise. We need to keep that person around. But what I think I told you that one of the lines I had was, I was the least important person in the building. But if I screw up my job, it has the biggest impact. Not that it's the most productive job, but I can mess up the entire environment and get all of these people not working, and suddenly everything is a catastrophe.
Yes.
Not because of my individual effort, but
because of being a fulcrum.
Right. It's like, hey, this what I do can have a huge impact. But it's still it's an important job, but it's just as important as the janitor's job. It's just as important as the guy that's picking up whatever.
Right.
So, but what you talked about with trying to identify and evaluate, that's what we're missing. We think that you can get a piece of paper and that will make you an expert. I don't know if you saw the very beginning video that I did on the problem. He had somebody that was the distinguished graduate from the management school and was terrible to her people. And the person that graduated towards the bottom had the best leadership environment in the whole company. And the big bosses said, let's put her over there because she's the honor graduate.
Right.
And everybody's going, no, she's not. Because here's the thing. If I'm giving you a written test, well, there's people that are really good at written tests, but that's not people.
Right.
How many days have you walked into work where everything was exactly as you expected?
Never.
Not once.
Yeah.
You know, I love it. I tell the story. I walk in, but before you make it to the back of the building, you've got 5 problems.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's when you're feeling good.
And that's when
you're walking in going like, I think today's going to be a good day.
Today's going to be perfect. Boom, 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 boom. Like, oh my God. But that's what you're there for.
Right.
And there's not a checklist for any of them. No. Every time it's a unique problem.
Every time. Every time. Because every time it involves a person who, in and of itself, that one person, not to mention all the other people that it affects, is such a complicated individual in and of itself that there's no way that you can just have a easy prescription
Right.
for this is what solves this
If it
issue.
was easy, they wouldn't come to
Yeah.
you.
Uh-huh.
That's
Right.
the problem.
Right.
You know.
Uh-huh. Yeah. But the thing that we are seeing around us, and sometimes we fall victim to, is that everything we want to simplify.
Right.
Because we live in a very complicated world, overly complicated world.
Yeah.
So let me just go ahead and easily simplify it. So, you know what's the simplest thing? If you bring me a piece of paper that says that you went to school for 4 or 8 years and says that you specifically studied what I'm going to ask you to impart, know something about, then that tells me that you're ready for the role that I have open. It's an oversimplification.
It is.
To the
That's
point
a
in
good point.
time
That's
where
a
it
really good
actually
point.
hamstrings us.
Yeah.
Yeah, right? We think that because of I don't want to get to know you. I can't get to know you well enough to be able to say you are a people leader. All I can do is go based off of the very simple things that you're bringing to the table. Hopefully something in a frame that states that I think you'll be up to the level that you need to be. And then I'll wait a year and find out that I was wrong because I really didn't have time to do the research.
Well, and this is what I talk about. This is the HR nightmare, right? Because we are so paranoid to be able to tell somebody, hey, we're going to evaluate you, and if you don't work out, we'll keep you in the company, but we're going to find something else for you to do, but you're not going to be in charge of people.
Right.
That takes a lot of guts. And the problem is what happens with most management systems is there's management types in there, so they are not equipped to evaluate if it's a leader or not either.
No.
And that's
They
where
have
I
no
say you got to
idea.
have somebody at every level.
Right. Not only do they have no idea, but right away from the get-go, they wanted to oversimplify things so that they didn't have to get their hands too dirty.
Right.
But then it doesn't get better. It's not as if over the course of the next 365 days, I want to now delve into something I wasn't even willing to do on day one.
Exactly.
No, it's like, I don't want to follow up on you. I want you to be self-sustaining. I want to be able to yell at you if you don't produce the numbers, because those are the things that I actually am
Well,
good
that's
at.
easy to measure.
But when it comes down to how are you building relationships with people, are you honest? Do you have convictions? Are you ethical? Are you humble? Those sorts of things that I'm really not even good at identifying in myself, let alone in someone else.
Yeah.
I don't ever want to come back and look at that again. I don't want to observe it or try to pick it apart. So just be good and leave me alone. And I'll just get on the phone and yell at you on occasions when I can actually see something empirical that I can say you're not measuring up to.
So you just made me remember something that I think I said in one of my other videos, but this is just a great time to say it. The problem is you get somebody that walks into an interview and says, well, here's all of my qualifications. And you say, and you're in your mind, because we've talked about the definition and then the philosophy, which is, humility and tech. And so you say, well, what's your thoughts on humility? Oh, I'm super humble. You're like, okay.
Right.
And I have my integrity is amazing. Okay, so you're full of crap. That's the other problem that you have. Because anybody who starts bragging about that, like we interviewed somebody once, me and another guy a few years ago. This guy walked in, oh, I'm a servant leader. My people are the most important. Everything that I have is focused on the leaders. And then he immediately went on for 10 minutes bragging about how amazing he was. And I was just like, so none of what you just said at the beginning is absolutely
Invalidated.
It's all invalidated, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, you have to have that person, because I don't know if you saw my thing about leaders recognize leadership in other people, kind of like musicians and comedians and all that sort of stuff. Right away, right away. When you and I first met, I was like, oh, this guy's got it. This guy's sharp. He's on top of things.
Oh, thanks.
I mean, if you had been selected for the job, you never applied, but if you'd been selected for the job instead of me, I would have been 100% behind you. You know what I mean? And, but you recognize that in people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, but and we didn't know anything from Adam. We talked for 5 minutes, and I
Right.
was like, this guy's pretty sharp, So, but that's why you need a leader type,
Right.
Because somebody that wants to simplify. Well, I've got these 8 requirements. This person has 8 pieces of paper that meet those requirements. Put them in charge.
Right. So easy.
Have you evaluated them with power and complexity and chaos? Not at all.
No.
And so then, like you said, it ends up being luck. And then what really happens is that the management types select each other and move up higher in the organization. So then what happens with the leader types? They get frustrated and leave.
Right. Right.
Because
Yeah.
they're being micromanaged and having people on their necks. And
Yeah. And that's something that managers tend to do. They take along with them for the ride other managers, and nothing ever improves. Nothing ever improves.
Right.
Everything stays static. As you've mentioned before, one of the most fear inspiring possibilities, outcomes, is that everything remains the same. And in this instance, it is 100% that the status quo will never change when that manager grabs a hold of the hand of another
Yep.
manager and drags them up to the top, who grabs another manager and drags them along. And so you just see the building blocks are laid out
Yep.
for that organization of any kind to maintain the exact same structure, which may initially seem like a winning formula, but will always, over time, prove to be a failing
Well, because it becomes an
outcome.
organization that's
Yeah.
set like this, and then suddenly the environment changes,
Right.
and they're incapable of change because
No possibility of
what's their first response? Well, do the process harder. No, I just did it perfectly, and it didn't work. 10 times.
Yeah.
Harder.
Yep.
What we're going to come up with 2 more processes. No, we got to change everything. And then all of the people that were responsible for the process think they're going to lose their power. That's something that I don't know if I wrote you about. That's something that I've also thought about, and maybe you'll agree or disagree. I don't know. Is that so? If you have somebody that's a leadership type, they get confronted with some crazy thing, and they make the best decision they can. The decisions may be terrible, not so terrible, and kind of awful. And so they pick kind of awful because that's the closest to good that they can get.
Yeah.
So they're making a bad of 3 bad decisions. They're making the least bad.
Yeah.
A manager will absolutely operate out of fear of losing their power.
Yes.
So they either won't decide, or they kick it up the chain, or they make some decision in a panic, so it's wrong because they're afraid to take in any sort of risk, or they make because they're in a panic of losing their power, they make this terrible decision that causes all sorts of catastrophe.
Yeah.
And so it's like they pick the most terrible decision because it's the first one that they thought of.
Right.
And that's something that I think we see a lot with a lot of bureaucrats, a lot of management types, is they go, man, I don't want to get yelled at, so I'm doing this. You go, yeah, but that doesn't take care of any of the goals. Remember we talked about attune competence and environmental hierarchies in pursuit of a goal. Well, you do something that messes with the competence, messes with the environment because you're doing it out of fear, well, you haven't met your goal.
Right.
But if your boss is a leader type and comes down and says, what happened? You say, boss, here was this, and here was this, and here was this. This is what I picked. And they go, well, I would have done the same thing. Or, good job, you made a decision.
Right.
Because that's the worst. I'm just going to wait until the event is gone and say, it's too late. I couldn't do anything. That's a disaster as well. But that's something that bugs me too, is I see a lot of people. I mean, it's happened with the school district here in town. They came out, there's no problems at the school. Everything's fine. There's no health issues with this stupid virus. There's all this stuff. And then they come out and say, well, we're going to keep all these protocols in place for another 6 weeks just to make sure. It's like nothing has happened. It's fine.
Yeah.
Stop. You know, well, because they're just too scared to say, hey, we're going to take a little bit of a risk here.
Yeah. They want to be able to find comfort in following what's written.
Right.
If it's written down, if it's a protocol, then at the very worst, when people are demanding answers, I can say, look, this is the book and I followed it to a T.
Yeah.
So you can't hold me extra
hold me
accountable. Like I did what I was supposed to do. And that will get them somewhere with some people.
And that's that fear thing, right? Because then they can say, I got a defense.
Right.
They
use it as a defense mechanism.
Yeah.
They use it to keep from finding themselves in any deep trouble.
Right.
And I see that regularly with these multi-billion-dollar sports organizations. Oftentimes, like there's the time period where maybe the analytics aren't getting me where I need to be, but my boss is analytically driven, so I'm going to keep pounding us into the ground. I'll dig us 6 feet deep,
Right.
so long as I can say to my boss that I did what he believed in without trying to think outside the box,
Yeah.
without trying to innovate, because innovation is what gets you canned
Oh, sure.
quickly and easily. I don't want to innovate. Don't try to be smart. Just
Yeah.
say that I did things that were written in black and white.
Right. Oh, yeah. Well, and that's, I mean, you can even see that with, I just forgot. I just lost it. I should have written it down. Anyway, yeah. So, interesting. What was the other thing that I wrote? Because you said you had something else that you were interested in that I had said that I sent you. Oh, no, that was different. Sorry, everybody. You have to mess with me going through my notes.
I think mine may have had to do with the questions that were asked of a person
Oh,
that
go
was
ahead.
being
Yeah,
promoted.
if you've got something, please.
Well, in reference to one, where does the power lie? As to how power is generated,
Right.
because power obviously is the topic, but sometimes what we fail to realize, and this is something that you spoke about, is where should the power derive from?
Oh, right.
And oftentimes the power is being derived from the top, and in many cases it's from a group of people or even one person who is far removed from the organization, the part of the organization that is going to be run by this person being put into a place of authority. As opposed to that, though, isn't it important that there be input from those people that are actually going to be overseen by this
Right.
person? And I think that oftentimes there's a fear of doing that because, well, they're obviously always going to pick the person that is the easiest on them, the person that doesn't drive them, the person that doesn't get them to succeed or develop. And that's a rational fear. The point isn't going all one way or all the other. It's
Right.
not in that we should make it so that the people who are going to be under the authority of this person wholly have full authority to pick them, to decide who
Yeah.
they should be, but should they not be able to give valid feedback? Should they not be able to have a part in, not even necessarily the most important part, but a part in helping the person who is more far removed
Right.
from the situation make a better decision than to just say, somebody needs to do this job. You seem to be able to do it based off of your the paperwork that you brought to me.
Yeah.
I don't know anything else about you. I don't know anything else that you've accomplished. I don't even know if you have those accomplishments, but everything checks out. So I'm going to place you in charge of them. And then let's just see. Let's just see how it goes.
Yeah. So that, but that issue is what you're talking about, now that I think about it a little bit more, is still a symptom of the fact that there aren't leadership types at every level in the organization. So you have a bunch of managers, just like you said, here's your paperwork, we're going to promote you.
Yeah.
Never mind that you are abusive and you treat people like tyrants and you're power mad, and the first thing you're going to do. I know some people in the previous organization I worked at that showed up to work 3 or 4 hours, 3 or 4 times a week
Wow.
instead of doing what they were supposed to do.
Yeah.
And they still had that job. And how the heck does that happen? Well, they didn't have anybody checking on them, right? So if you're a leader and you're checking on somebody, so that would help identify that person. The person that's, this man or woman, super popular, doesn't hold any accountability, no standards, no nothing. I'm not promoting him. Even though everybody loves her or him, I'm not going to promote him because I need somebody who's going to be able to, yes, deal with the people, but also get the job done.
Right.
I don't know if you've heard me say that before. It's like your goal as a leader, your job as a leader is to make everybody's job as easy as possible while still meeting the company's goals.
Right.
You still have to meet the goal,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Hey, I got to move. This is the crazy example. We got to move 50-pound rocks all day. Okay, well, I want to figure out how to make that as easy as possible. But we're still moving the rocks. We still got to do the hard work.
Right.
And it might be that it doesn't get any easier than that. But whatever you can do as a leader, that's your job. It's not to go pleasing the bosses.
Right.
Because those people will then work extra hard when they know that you're taking care of them.
Yeah.
But what you said is great because that is a symptom of no leadership at the higher levels. It's management types.
Yeah.
It should be, hey, look, you're producing great numbers. I get it, right? You're the best salesperson I know. You're the best operator of this I know. But I know you want this promotion. How about we just give you a little pay raise or I'll give you a little bit more money. You keep being amazing. I'm going to get this person over here because what do we know about most leader types? They're above average at stuff because their strength is not the skill. Their skill is dealing with the team.
Right.
And so you got to find the people that are going to be great with the team because, I need to be able to know what you're doing. I need to be able to know, but I need to understand it. You're the best at it though.
Yeah.
I mean, my entire life, I think that I was solidly, a 55 out of 100 on most things.
Yeah.
But when it came to being in charge, except for a couple times because I lost my mind and then realized I lost my mind, I was the best at the team. That's when I was the shining.
Yeah.
So that's what you need is somebody who notices that.
You were a facilitator.
Right.
And managers aren't facilitators. Managers are people who stand back and point and tell other people what to do.
Yep.
And oftentimes don't have any clue what they're doing.
Yeah.
They're looking for a very tangible and easy to read result where they can say you either did it or didn't do it, which unfortunately life doesn't work that way.
Right.
100% of the time it's never worked that way. Yeah. So they're looking for things that can oftentimes be misread, misinterpreted,
right.
Data that doesn't necessarily indicate that this person is great at what they're doing or that they're even doing the job that you set them out to do. But that's what a manager does. A manager just looks for that easy route out, and a leader has to be more than that. A leader has to be a facilitator who can get involved with other aspects of the roles that he oversees, right. He or she oversees. And oftentimes that person isn't who's chosen to be in that position of authority because there's an overemphasis on performance.
Right.
And performance matters. We can't take performance out of the mix with anything that we do, but it is a thing that can be overemphasized and therefore can be misleading to that person who is afraid to get involved, that person that's afraid to facilitate, right. which a manager will always be.
Well, so there's 2 points that you said. One of them is, the example that I like to use is had a person that was working for me and their numbers were not great. Well, they were working another job. So I had a person working part-time and they could only work in the evenings. Well, the place that we worked at, evenings were not busy. And so it was, this guy's not performing. He's terrible. I want him gone. And I said, no, I've seen his work ethic. He's fine. So I said, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to work 4 shifts with this guy. So I went in, scheduled myself to close every time with this person. Well, one night, there was nobody in his department. So I took him over and had him work in another department. He made some revenue. Next night, in his department, he had one person buy a laptop. Fine. The next night, there was the complete store there was nothing going on. The 4th night, things got a little bit busy. So his numbers were still terrible, but he did absolutely everything that I asked him to do during that time. I'm going to fire that guy?
Mm-hmm. Right.
No, I'm not going to fire that person. Well, I'm making their numbers. I understand, but I was there.
Yeah.
They got every number that there was. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We were doing everything we could to help everybody in the store, but I was watching this person and it was not because they weren't performing. So what would you like me to do to fix that? Well, the numbers don't look good. Okay. Well, there's a human producing that number and I watched the human and the human's fine.
Yeah.
The human's got a great work ethic. The human did everything that I said to the exact level that I wanted. And then the second thing was, you talked about managers not knowing what they're doing. Right. And so then there's the other management type, which is, well, so-and-so's been late 3 days. I want them fired. Okay, well, what's their attendance record been for the past 2 years?
Right.
Haven't been late except for the past 3 days. Have you asked them what's going on? No, nope. They've been late. Okay, so they've got a performance record that says that they've done all of this and suddenly there's something going on in their personal life. Let's find out what that is.
Right.
Oh, I'm trying to take care of this. Kid's super sick. My wife's working here. Mama, tell you what, let's do this. Take a couple days off, do this, go take care of your business. When you get all squared away, you come back. Management type. Oh, that's, you're letting them get away with it. This is just a job.
They're letting them get away with living.
I'm
with,
letting them
with having
be
a life.
human. Right.
Yeah.
They happen to
yeah.
be a human.
Yeah.
Let me But, I didn't feel like showing up. I was drunk twice.
Completely different.
Okay, guess
Completely
what?
different story.
Guess what?
Completely
We're
different story.
starting some paperwork.
Yeah. But you could only find that out
If
by
you talk to
actually
them.
involving yourself with
Right.
a human being, which would take that people orientation
Yeah.
that most managers, people who are strictly managers, don't have any leadership, but just management capability. They don't have that ability. They don't have that desire. I have no need to involve myself any further. I can look at the number and see that they arrived late. And all I ever want
all
to
I
do
care
is
about.
look at the numbers, because I can also look at the numbers and see if my business is performing.
That's simple.
And it's simple. It's so simple, and it doesn't put me out. Right there's that quote that there's no comfort in the growth zone, but there's
Right.
no growth in the comfort zone.
Exactly.
Right, and I think that is something that the management type runs up against constantly.
Yeah.
Because it's not comfortable for a person who has only ever managed things to all of a sudden try to lead people,
Right.
which would involve having to do something that they didn't study in school. They had no one ever teach them about its importance.
Yeah.
They have always put more of an emphasis on themselves than any other person that they've ever been around. So therefore, now you're asking me to step outside of my comfort zone and go have a discussion, mano y mano,
Right.
with another person about what may make their life better. Well, they're probably going to tell me something I don't want to hear.
Yeah.
So
I
why would
might
I
be,
would I
I might be the problem.
what if I'm the problem? I don't want to hear that, because that would mean that they're really the problem.
That's right.
So I won't do it. I refuse to do it. And
if
I'll get
all of
nowhere.
your employees are not performing, it's not the employees.
It can't be me though. It can't be
But
me.
it's not me.
Yeah.
Well, but I talked about that as I don't know if you remember when I talked about it in one of my other discussions, where I said the problem we have is you have somebody that's 13. I want to be a millionaire. How to be a millionaire? You need to go run a business. How do I do that? You need to get an MBA. Cool. So in order to get an MBA, I want to get an MBA from one of the top 5 schools. So I'm going to do all this stuff to show how amazing I am to get into college. Then when I'm in college, I'm going to do all this stuff to show how amazing I am to get into this top 5 master's program. And then you get into there. And then they walk around for 2 years and tell you that you are a future leader and you're amazing and you're all this sort of stuff. And then you go out and start acting like you know what's what in a place where guys been doing their job, people been doing their job for 30 years and got all this experience. And you walk in going, well, I am anointed because I'm amazing.
Right.
You expect that person to have humility and integrity and empathy?
How could they?
How could they?
It's not something
We've
that they've
programmed them.
ever been taught.
Right.
Not once.
Or even
the way.
even assessed for. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
So I don't. Did you watch the video that I did on the Taj Hotel? Yeah.
Yeah.
So they've got it. I don't know that they're consciously doing it, but they go out and
doubt
find
it.
people that have humility and integrity and empathy, and say, "Now you come here and you work and you do amazing stuff for us."
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the problem. And so we've done that process to get these people an MBA, but we've never evaluated them with power. We've never evaluated them with control over people.
No.
Because most of the time, like we talked about, what's the correct answer? Probably not to do anything.
Right.
Or say, hey, I'm the new person. Let me get your input. What do you guys think? What do you think is the best? Well, it doesn't break the law. It doesn't violate this. It gets the job done. Let's do it. They don't do that. It's, well, no. I mean, my favorite, I don't know if you've heard of Lean Six Sigma. Have you ever heard of that management system?
Yes.
Do you know what that was originally designed for? Factories. And we have morphed it into people.
Right.
It was designed for machines.
Yeah.
And we're trying to apply it to people. Well, that's a management approach, right?
It is.
Instead of saying, hey, because like I've talked about, you can't apply a system to a bunch of people. Anyway, we've gone through.
We
that
want
many times.
to automate the human experience. We want to automate it because, again, it would be the easiest thing to do if we could just take this process and stamp it on this group of people, this organization of people, and just say, well, this is the way it's supposed to be. And you can say that, it doesn't mean anything. It gets you nowhere.
That's right.
But that's what we tend to do. We use a lot of words to describe how things should be in an ideal system, and we don't have the humility to admit that we don't have an ideal system to apply it to.
Right. Well, and that's where I go back to the whole idea is that having humility, integrity, empathy, and vigilance, that can be applied to everything.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, I don't know the answer,
Right.
but I'm going to have integrity, so I'm not going to break the law.
Right.
I'm going to make sure that I understand where everybody's perspective is. I might have to do the hardest part anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to pay attention to make sure that I'm not doing something stupid. And I'm going to have, I'm going to have, what did I say? I forgot empathy, vigilance, integrity, whatever. But it's like that can be applied to every situation.
Mm-hmm. And the difference there is that instead of being a process, those four things
Yeah.
are more of an admission.
Right.
An admission of the fact that this is really what we should have been looking for. This is what we should have been attempting to foment the entire time. Unfortunately, for maybe hundreds of years now, we haven't been, but it's not a process. It's not something where you can just say, if everyone does just this alone, then nothing else matters.
Yeah.
And, it's written in a playbook. So you can just, all you got to do is turn back to the playbook and, read it, and it'll get into
here's the
you.
thing, and we talked about, or maybe we didn't. I think I said it in one of my other things. I can't remember. But the problem is you go, well, okay, so let me make sure that I'm being humble. Okay, so here's the humility part. I was like, no, you just have to do it. You can't go down a checklist. I don't know if you saw my example where you go and say, okay, so according to this philosophy thing, I'm supposed to have empathy. How's your day been? You're like, well, my cat died. Oh, okay, so
on
hi,
to part
how's
two.
and you're like, dude, my cat died. You didn't care.
Yeah.
You don't care.
False empathy.
Oh,
No
yeah.
empathy.
Yeah. And so that's the thing is it's all performance based and it has to be genuine. You can't fake it.
Yeah. You have it.
Which is why, and so to me, this is the one thing that I think is a weakness in my argument, or a weakness or something, is you still have to have the talent to attune, because just like I talked about with them in the Mumbai thing, I don't know that all those people are leaders, but they're finding people with humility. And so you have the philosophy, but not necessarily the talent.
Right.
In their leadership process, I think they identify the talent. Because you can still you should be humble. You should have empathy. You should have integrity. You should be paying attention as a human. But suddenly you're in charge of this complex thing. Maybe you don't have the ability to do that. And that's okay. Right? We need everybody to be good at what they're good at.
Right.
So.
But I'll tell you why that's not a hole in the argument. And it is because if you get the right person who possesses those four qualities, looking for someone who possesses those four qualities, then you still can arrive at that same positive outcome.
Right.
As opposed to when you have somebody in a position who is lacking one, two, or maybe even all four of those things, trying to accomplish promoting someone or finding someone just to hire alone. With that, they won't. They won't do it. The system is broken to begin with. You don't fix it by telling them what it is that they should be looking for, because they don't possess it in and of themselves. And it's like trying to describe a color to a person who's never seen before. Right? You don't actually get anywhere with them. But again, if we start over again, if we start getting the right things done in any one organization, bringing in the right people to begin with, then it self-generates. Then those people start to bring in more of the right people, because they're utilizing the right characteristics to identify the right characteristics. And so it's not a fallacy in and of itself. It's only a problem if you have an organization that refuses to evolve, refuses to adapt to those circumstances.
Well, I use an example a lot about selecting people. So I was in an organization, I was at this training event, and about a quarter of the people there that were leader types were female. And we had, at the company at the time, 3/4 of the leadership team were female. All three of them came and talked to us. And they said, each one of them, I might have a big mouth. They stood up and said, hey, we need, this is not the best representation, male to female. we need to have more female leaders. So I'm just the new person here. I'm on board with that 100%. What sort of a identification system? What should we be looking for? What can we do to identify and develop them better so that we're not just promoting women to say that we've promoted a woman? You know, oh, I need to have more women. Here, now I've got more women.
Right.
No, that doesn't work.
No.
That's dumb. 2 of the 3 said that's an interesting question. And I was going, the other one said, I'll get back to you, and never did. But I'm going, so what are you doing? Right? A leader would say, you know what? I don't know. If they had humility, they would say, I'm not sure, but that's a great question. I tell you what, you and who else is interested in knowing about this? You get 4 people to raise their hand. We're going to have lunch together and talk about it.
Let's have a focus group.
Let's have a little focus group and figure out what it is.
Yeah.
Because that, if they were leader types, they would have said, I'm going to get you an answer, because the fact that you're asking that question means that there isn't anything. And there isn't.
Yeah.
And I'm going, well, I'm just going to go back to looking for people that can have humility and integrity and blah, blah, blah. You know, that's what I'm going to do.
Right.
I didn't know this was before I finally realized this thing. But I was going, is there something different? Is leadership different with women? No, that's the other thing, is it's not. Look for leadership characteristics. They're not external. Nothing on the outside measures your leadership ability. It's all inside.
Yeah.
And so that was before I realized that. But that was the other thing that got me thinking. I'm going, well, what do you mean? If they don't know, then what? You know, these people are supposed to be, why did they get promoted?
Right. Right. Yeah.
Management types.
Right.
You know what I mean?
They're
They're way up in the organization. And I'm going, come on.
Thinking within a box, not able to innovate, scared to do so. And when challenged, that's oftentimes where you see leadership present itself, when challenged.
Right.
And so in that instance, when challenged, the answer was to
move along,
tread over it. Yeah. Just keep on pushing
And then the
forward.
funny part is that there's another one of the women that was there. She came over, she goes, so the answer was that. I said, because we had been talking the whole time. I said, I said, well, here's what I've been doing. You know, here's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
And she goes, well, that makes sense. But there it was a focus. Right. You know, we should have been stopped. The rest of that course should have stopped, or that afternoon should have been, let's all talk about this.
Yeah.
And because that would have been the most useful thing out of that whole week. Anyway, I don't want to belabor anything.
But that was an important thing, and still remains an important thing.
Well,
and most organizations haven't tried to address it.
Right. It's we need to have better representation. Okay, well then help me identify what we're looking for, because I have worked for amazing women leaders, and I've worked for bad ones, but I've also worked for a ton of bad males and some good ones too, right? So it's not that there's some mystery. I think this is the answer to the mystery. Go find somebody who's got the talent and who's got integrity, empathy, humility, and they're going to be amazing.
Yeah. And as a person of color, I appreciate the fact that there is some push for diversity, but when that push strictly comes down to a number game where we need to have this amount of people, and just go find that amount of people and we'll give you a gold star when you achieve this number of people, that doesn't further the cause. It doesn't help get the right people in an organization.
Well,
and even worse, it probably harms the cause, because the people that will be brought in will fail.
Yeah.
Because many of those people won't have those 4 characteristics and will show themselves to be incapable of leading. And what do you blame it on? I mean, you could just as easily blame it on who they are on the outside.
Yeah.
Some people will do that incorrectly, but you could just as easily blame it on who they are on the outside as they are on the inside, because they were brought in for a particular reason, and that particular reason seems to be the reason why they failed.
Well, and we talked about this with a slightly different bent on it, but what happens if you are already, let's say the goal is to have 20% and you're at 30. So what, do you go fire 10%? Or do you say, because that bothered me too, is I had a situation where we were way over the goal for a specific category. And so I said that, well, who should I fire then so I can get to the right number?
Right.
And they said, well, what do you mean? And then I even said to this person, my boss's boss, said, shouldn't you go find the people that are already way above the goal and find out what they're doing and then share that instead of just saying, go get me that number?
Right.
But no, that's not what they did. And I'm going, what are we doing? That's not leadership. Leadership is, because it's not showing off. Everybody's better at something than somebody else. So it's like, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? We got 3 different people in 3 different parts of the country that are amazing at this. So clearly it's not the same thing, or is it? And it might be.
But when an organization has become stale, and again, as we've talked about, when the power is concentrated amongst a small group, then collaboration is out the window. And collaboration would be the only thing that could break up that power structure and move around talent, move around ideas, move around improvements, things that could make that organization fresh again, more like a brand new organization. Instead, it's going to get more stale.
Right.
It's not going to become better because people aren't interested in doing something new or uncomfortable. They're interested in maintaining that status quo. So therefore, there will be no collaboration, because collaborating would be to do something that we don't do.
Well,
I don't need to collaborate.
That's humility.
I'm at the top.
That's humility.
Right.
You know, hey, I don't have the answers. I've been out of the game for a couple of years. Let me get you guys. Let me figure out what's going on. You know. Yeah, that's a great point, because we talk about hierarchies getting stale, and then the leader should be paying attention. Hey, I get that this is our goal, but let's go do it. You've heard my example before, right? Hey, you know, we're doing A, B, and C, and we were supposed to get D. We're doing A, B, and C and getting Q.
Yeah.
So do we want Q or do we want D? Because if we want D, we're not doing it. So we need to change the system.
Yeah.
If we want Q, don't change anything.
Right.
And so then people go, well, no, we got to do the system harder. No, we're still getting Q. That's a leader, because you can't marry the system.
Yeah.
Because it might not work. You know, I mean, there were a couple times where I came up with it. I got this great idea. Well, let's try it out for a week. A week later, everybody's like, boss. I was like, don't tell me. You don't have to tell me. I goofed. My bad. But what's the team do when you do that? They go, appreciate it. You know, we did what you said. You admitted you're wrong. Let's try something else.
Thanks for trying.
Yeah. Thanks. Appreciate you.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Well, cool. So what have we missed? Anything?
I'm not sure.
Or is there more to talk about?
Oh, there's a lot more to talk about.
Well, because my idea
is
that we'll have to, you know, maybe we think about this some more and we do another series, another thing later. Because this is the one thing that I've decided this needs to be another chapter in the book, because because power is there. Anytime you have an organization, you know, because super competent people have power. Everybody has a certain level of power in an organization. And so how that is distributed or managed or looked at or used is important. And I'm embarrassed to say that I went through that whole process, was all proud of thinking that I had all the chapters. And then I'm going, man, what about power? And then I started writing and went, oh, jeez, I missed something. But that's humility.
That's
right?
humility. You're just personifying one of your biggest characteristics.
The goal, I think I told you, the goal with what I'm trying to write is not a book on how to be a leader. It's to go back and it's to take the whole thing apart, because it's become so complicated.
Yeah.
And it's such a mess that we got to unravel the whole thing. And power is there all the time. I think that's why I wasn't thinking about it.
Yeah. Well, the best part about this book is, if it's used correctly, there will be introspection, which is the one thing that can actually be accomplished. Because, like you said, you're not going to teach a leader how to be a leader, and just as much, you're probably not teaching a manager how to be a leader. There might be a few people who are strictly managers who might have that that revelation, but for the most part, what this is it's going to reach those people, leaders or pure managers, who can then do some introspection and see what they can adapt.
Well, that's
how they can
improve. That's what the idea is to say, you got to look at the way we're thinking about it.
Yeah.
Because I had a boss once, big boss, 3 levels above boss, and I didn't like him about 40% of the time. But the thing that was interesting is he did some stuff that was quote unquote out of the leadership book. He would check on people. He would do all this sort of stuff. And I couldn't figure out what I didn't like about it. You know when I figured out what it was I didn't like about him? When I was doing this. This was 20 years ago, though.
Yeah.
He wasn't genuine. He was doing it because it was on a list. Because he also had like a staff that worked for him.
Yep.
He treated them like garbage. He had an assistant, an aide, and he never used that guy's name. He just called him aide.
Wow.
Hey aide, hey this, hey that. And he would always have his aide lay out all this stuff for him everywhere he went and sat down.
Yeah.
And he would never use any of it. Wow. And treated everybody around him like garbage. But he said good things. He had good ideas.
Sure.
He had good stuff.
Yeah.
And some of it made sense. But then when I finally realized just now that it wasn't genuine. He was the guy that was, I'm supposed to have empathy. How's your day going?
Yep.
Well, I'm a little, thank you. So that's the other part of what I'm trying to do is to get it so that now even people that aren't leader types can look and go, now I see what that person's up to. Now I know why I can't stand my boss. Or now I understand why this person, or they should never get promoted, you know?
Or maybe now I think that I might see the issue with what I've been doing. Maybe the reason why I keep banging my head against a wall but getting absolutely nowhere is because of the fact that I am just checking boxes. Maybe I'm not genuine. Maybe I'm not doing anything differently than what's been described here in this book.
Right. Normally I'm good with people. I don't know why I'm not doing it now. Oh, maybe. This is my great example. This was a couple of years ago. Well, you can't lead millennials. The millennials aren't the problem. You're the problem.
Right.
Because the leader's job is to communicate to the person, no matter where they are.
Yeah.
Because, we had 17-year-olds, 16-year-olds, up to 70-something-year-olds. You got to talk to those people different.
You did.
You can't lead any of those people the same.
Right.
You have to have the same philosophy, but how you deal with this person and this person and this deal with everybody differently. And that's what really bugs me too when you see, well, what's your leadership style? Well, what's the situation? And who are the people?
Exactly.
Then my style will be this. You can't change it. That's required.
Yeah.
That's required. That's how you get the best out of people.
You got to be all things to all people.
I come up to you because I think I know you pretty well. I come up to you and start being all demeaning and poking you in the chest and yell at you to get something done. You'd be like, watch how fast I can mess your job up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or I walk up and say, hey, buddy, you know what you're supposed to be doing, right? Yeah, well, look what you did. And you're like, I don't want to talk about it. I'll fix it.
Yep.
That's you, right? But there are some people that you've got to, blah, 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 blah. They're like, and they go and perform super hard.
Yeah.
Those people are rare,
Yeah, but you find them. You run into them.
You run into them.
There are generational divides. There are cultural divides.
Do I have to hit you in the head with a 2x4? Yeah. Please. Okay, I can't hit you with the 2x4, but I'm going to have to. I can't abuse you. That's against the law. But Jeez.
Yeah, but if you try to use the exact same tool with every one of the projects that you have around your house, you are not going to get anywhere. You'll have a couple of things that it'll work on, and you'll have many more things that it won't.
Right.
And it's the exact same thing in any organizational structure. You cannot apply the same tool to the way that you deal with every person. You're going to have to get into your tool bag, and you're going to have to make sure that you are adaptive.
Or sometimes you've got 3 tools and you're going, well, if I weld these together.
Sometimes that might be the
I only
solution.
needed that once, so we're just going to use that one.
Yeah, there's some unique ones out there. Yeah. There are some unique examples.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Well, I think this has been good. I know you're on a little bit of a time frame, but I think this has been a good discussion. So
I enjoyed it.
Hopefully,
I'm looking forward to more.
Well, yeah. Like I said, I think this is probably the thing that'll get the most interest because, well, I don't know. Who knows what's going to generate interest?
Yeah,
but
we'll see.
In a little bit, you might think of something else you want to talk about, or a different aspect, and we'll proceed from there. So
I'll guarantee you. I'll be doing some thinking.
Yeah. No, that's what I think is nice about this is it does make you go, well, wait a minute. I had one guy that says he watches a video and then thinks about 2 weeks, and he goes and watches the next one.
Yeah.
Because he was the guy that was in the Navy, and thought that he said he wasn't taught any of this in the Navy.
Right.
And he goes, man, if I'd known this, I said, well, because he's sort of a leader type as well, but he's sort of the leader type that doesn't really want to be in charge. He wants to be, well, you've got one at your store, who likes to be just below, don't want any of the heat. He wants to be able to make the decisions, but don't want any of the heat, right?
Right.
So he's that kind of guy.
Sure.
So anyway, well, sorry this went a little bit long. Hopefully it was a good discussion. Thank you very much for your time, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you very much.